Yes. So with that, I will actually handle the stage to Erin, who's going to talk about NFTs and neuroscience and all kinds of cool stuff.
So I'm Erin Magennis, and today I'm going to be talking a bit about innovation and from a few different angles that may not always overlap. So we're going to be talking about NFTs, blockchain, and how businesses are using those to innovate, as well as from a neuroscience angle to help innovate your life as well. And so some of the goals for today, if you can move to the next slide, are to first set a foundation to explore what innovation is, and then exploring this through a few different examples of NFTs in different businesses, how they're incorporating them. And then we'll walk away with 3 lessons from neuroscience to really tap into some of these different innovation skill sets that we might possess or might want to kind of strengthen. So, first, the question is, what is innovation? And I'll pause here for a moment or two to just kind of ponder on that for ourselves. There can be a lot of different definitions of this, especially across different disciplines. But one definition that I think can be a nice summary of it is, if we move to the next slide, either the improvement of something that may already exist or the addition of something new. Um, and as we look to a few of these different examples, I would love to kind of bring both of these two lenses to kind of that thought process. So, looking at where we're at right now, I'd like for us to pause for a moment and we can move to the next slide. Thanks. And just think about some different challenges that you or your organization might be facing right now. Maybe it's your industry as a whole. And as we're thinking about these challenges, those can really be different opportunity areas. So, either thinking really small into the details or maybe a big, lofty, grand challenge that is worth solving for. So hopefully we might have 1 or 2 in mind, maybe something that's been irking you or top of mind for you lately. All right, we can move to the next slide. So often our greatest challenges, whether individually at an organization or at a larger societal level, this is where the greatest opportunities lie for growth, for the addition of something new, for improvement, and ultimately for innovation. And that's where real incredible things can happen. So, in my life, I've experienced a handful of different health challenges that has led me through an incredible journey that has opened up lots of different doors to those additions of new things or different improvements or innovations, so to speak. Next slide. So, first, that took me down the path of studying neuroscience to really understand what was happening at that kind of molecular level within my body. From there, I then dove into becoming a yoga instructor. Wanting to scale some of this knowledge to others, I then taught myself how to code and went on to make that available to other people through a handful of different businesses and startups. And through this whole journey, along with lots of other kind of stops along the way, I learned a lot of different things and have brought that into more of an educator type role, speaking, teaching, mentoring other people working through their own challenges and bringing new solutions out into the world, which really brings us to looking at the future, where we're going individually and kind of at that larger scale. And for me, this is has really been at the intersection of community, technology, and possibility. That's where I love to hang out and where a lot of the different things I've worked on and built kind of sit at that intersection point. And as we're looking towards the future, next slide, NFTs and Web3 are perfectly situated there too. And this has been a main focus of mine over the past couple of years in particular. Next slide. With my first startup in the space focused on building an augmented reality NFT creator app, really focused on that social side of things to get people to take those first steps into the world of NFTs. And then working on an NFT appraisal protocol to create a standardized system of valuations, allowing people to just feel a bit safer as they're stepping into the space of the newness of NFTs. And this background has allowed me to help other businesses and corporations really explore what the future of technology and possibility mixed with this human element can look like and how they can leverage these technologies of NFTs and really step into this Web3 space most effectively. Next slide. Ultimately, at these intersection points, it can lead into all of these other spaces, these interdisciplinary sectors of our lives or the market in general, whether it's from economics or job market perspective, from a legal perspective, creators in general in the creator economy, musicians, a venture side of things, entrepreneurship in general, and then looking at it from different cultural lenses as well, which are just a few different conversations that I've enjoyed being a part of on different stages over the past year or so. And ultimately, next slide, as we dive into what this technology really is, at its core, we might be able to define it as a really easy example of innovation. So if we break it down, next slide, one way, a very simplified way to describe the internet could be two different computers or machines connected through a web of sorts. Next slide. That we can pass information in between. Next slide. And this can be stored in different databases that we can all have access to and be able to see. Next slide. And this has laid the foundation. The internet is really this foundational element that has allowed all of the different apps and platforms and websites and many other things that we interact with on a daily basis to come into existence. In a very simplified way, that's one way to think about what the internet is, just this foundation for other things to exist on top of. Next slide. And as we think about blockchain, NFTs, Web3, crypto, we might be able to take a similar type of lens. So, building off of the example before of these different computers or machines being able to interact with a database of sorts of information that can be shared, um, blockchain is taking that to a next level through a process of verification and just kind of enhancing this web even further. Next slide. And by looking at all of these different changes through computers or miners, that verification can be just kind of secured in a much deeper way. Next slide. And then as we expand that network, it becomes more and more verified and secured in a very simplified way. That's one way that we can kind of understand what the foundation of blockchain is. Next slide. And it creates this interconnected web of these different data points or cells or blocks of information building on top of each other in this interconnected way. And instead of these individual blocks, we can then replace them with meaning. Next slide. Or fill those blocks with information, such as a value of a cryptocurrency. Many different ones popping up or getting even more strengthened over the past handful of years. Next slide. And instead of this just representing an individual cryptocurrency or currency of sorts, we can replace that with different values or assets, which can be in the form of pictures or videos or a song or any other type of file that we'd like stored in its place instead. And this is really where NFTs come into play, or non fungible tokens, which basically just means that one block is not equal to another. They have different things inside of them, files, assets, and meaning. And so they can't just be traded one for one because they are unique in that type of way. Next slide. And just like how the internet was the foundation for all of these other platforms that we likely use on a daily basis, NFTs in this world of Web3 is really the foundation for this whole frontier of new platforms and apps and ways of engaging with others and business in the world around us that we may not even be able to fathom completely effectively right now today. Next slide. So, as we think back to some of those different challenges that we identified at the beginning of this presentation, maybe thinking about what different opportunities there could be of a new frontier of a foundation that NFTs and Web3 kind of lay that can be built off of from there. At its core, this space can kind of be boiled down into wallets that exist to be able to conduct different transactions, marketplaces, which are simply a location, digital location through which to conduct these different transactions, and then receiving of ownership of sorts, which in these examples are NFTs, and that can then provide access or community or lots of other kind of possibilities along with it, in addition to simply owning that file. Next slide. And a few of these benefits of being able to interact and kind of build off of this new foundation is a much deeper sense of verification, true verification of the credibility of different digital files in particular, as well as a more easily stored version of verifying physical things as well. The ability to provide royalties to different creators down the line and track different artwork that they might create, giving rights to the community in terms of voting or the ability to make decisions of what the future might look like, as well as other additional revenue streams that we're starting to see different platforms or groups, collections um, built out for their different members. And at its core, a few different categories that are fairly popular right now that we can look to are digital media and collections. So this can be crypto art, songs, photography, profile pictures. A lot of these kind of more media centric versions of NFTs that can be bought and sold and traded and can also be built into collections, and all of that can be done there as well. Another bucket are games with a major focus on a play to earn mentality, with Axie Infinity and Zedrun being some forerunners there, as well as different worlds or metaverses such as Sandbox and Decentraland. Next slide. And as we're looking at some of these different examples, it's providing opportunities for these intersection points where a metaverse is more than just a world to interact with through avatars, but it's also a marketplace and a place for people to develop on top of and have economic interactions with through tokens. It's the ability to create different training models to invite new people into the space and really scale startups and different games in a much quicker way than a lot of spaces have seen before. And the ability to really give community members a sense of ownership and rights. And through all of this, it is taking a bit of a mindset shift to really kind of step into this space. But next slide. A lot of different leading companies are starting to do that. And if they are able to change different processes that rely on a whole workforce of people and a mentality they've had in place for many years and can innovate in that type of way, then there's no reason if maybe we're working at a smaller company or within a specific department that we don't also have that power to do it. A few of the different examples on here range from changing an entire name of company to taking old assets like magazine covers and transforming those into NFTs, or creating new subscription options across a wide range of cryptocurrencies, allowing an entirely new revenue model that might be a lot more sustainable for some of these different companies, or starting to step into different realms such as fashion that some of these brands may not have been owning as much in kind of that digital sphere, and bridging it from that physical space into this digital world, as well as a handful of large acquisitions too. Next slide. And another opportunity that really comes with NFTs are in the form of decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs, which, next slide, allow people as at this communal type of level to have true ownership over the communities that they're a part of, as well as providing different access to events or different channels of communication with people that they might not otherwise have been able to have access to. And really kind of lowering those barriers to entry into different spaces, honoring more what people are contributing, rather than just the explicit backgrounds that they might have. In addition, different funding vehicles allowing for new people and companies to step into spaces that might have been harder to get into, especially if they might have a more mission oriented kind of goal tied to it. And then really this idea of open source knowledge and user centered product development at a much wider level that can be incentivized in meaningful ways, allowing for even broader contribution, which potentially can really progress our society forward in incredible ways. Next slide. And in addition to kind of this people side of things, there's a lot of really cool improvements to different technologies that we might experience already. For example, the existence of some of these different digital displays as an art gallery. We've had art galleries for forever, and i- improving them to add this digital element, allowing people to engage in a more meaningful way or purchase an NFT while they're wandering around, or enhancing our experience of different games through haptic devices, sending different pulses or signals or sensations throughout our body, really just improving what that experience is and making it a bit more real. Also, mining equipment, just all of the new hardware being produced there, the new chips and processing abilities or new lines for different businesses, um, leaning into both that improvement side as well as introducing new things. Next slide. And ultimately, all of this provides this opportunity for people as well as businesses to enhance or really live out some of the different values they may have identified and transform them into virtues. For example, a sense of transparency or building for future generations are core aspects that a lot of different businesses, especially as business owners, people might have, um, or that might have been the original intention of creating different companies, putting people or the end user at the center of product development, really allowing them to become valued in a much more meaningful way, as mentioned in the DAO example, a commitment to community and valuing those different community members and being able to verify excellence as it's being created and produced are all different examples of how values that companies or individuals might have can really live them out through using kind of this new foundation of NFTs, to really just improve how they might have been acting already. Next slide. And ultimately, NFTs and Web3 and blockchain are just this foundation that allows for any different opportunities to blossom out of it, just as how the internet laid the foundation for an entirely new kind of era of business to be conducted. Same is happening here. So, thinking back to some of those different challenges we may have identified for ourselves, for our businesses, for industries we're a part of, there's this new foundation from which opportunities are sprouting up from to innovate and create something new or improve the efficiencies of what we may have been doing already. Next slide. And ultimately, all of these connection points or challenge points are opportunities for innovation to take place. Every time we might be interacting with different people, um, that can occur, and we can enhance it through our own personal touch as well as taking this technology to allow us to build something new or improve old systems and processes. Next slide. And ultimately, this sense of innovation or improvement and creation is all within your grasp and your hands. And being able to tap into the power of our own brain to bring it into that equation of innovating ultimately is also within your hands. But there are a few ways that we can enhance how our brain is functioning. Next slide. So, for instance, taking care of our gut, noticing what we're putting into our body. At first glance, it may seem like our gut it shouldn't be part of this conversation of how to improve our brain and how our mind is functioning. But it's been found that over 90% of the serotonin in our bodies is produced in our gut. And serotonin is a mood neurotransmitter that is heavily involved with feelings of anxiety and depression, which can be major inhibitors when we're starting to venture into spaces of newness or trying to make improvements or on our own lives or kind of at an organizational level as well. So noticing the foods we're eating, how they're making us feel, how we're able to function after eating different foods and becoming in tune there, as well as making sure we're being nourished at that nutritional level has a direct relationship with how we're able to show up and think and create new things, both in our individual lives as well as different organizations we might be a part of. Next slide. Another really powerful aspect of ourselves that can help improve our mind and our ability to think in innovative types of ways is the practice of deep breathing, which ultimately increases the oxygen that's available throughout our bodies and available for our brain as well. And in this practice of deep breathing, and it ultimately activates our parasympathetic nervous system, which is, if we've heard of the fight or flight system, it's the opposite of that. So the rest and digest, which is when we're in a state that we can actually relax. And in this moment or space of relaxation is where unique new ideas can come, or where we can really embrace our power or abilities and step into and start building whatever different ideas we might have. It can be as simple as taking a deep breath before working on some new venture, proposing an idea, or taking that step into creating something new or improving some legacy system that may have been around forever. And the simple practice of taking a few deep breaths can really help us kind of show up in that in a physiological way, which improves how we're showing up mentally as well. Next slide. And one third tip is to take advantage of your sleep. So when we're sleeping, especially towards the end of the day, the different activities we might have been a part of or the things we're consuming towards that end of the day are playing on repeat in our subconscious throughout our sleep. Our sleep is a time for our brain to process different things we may have experienced or learned throughout the day and really integrate it into our beingness, which determines our behaviors and how we show up in the next days, ultimately forming our habits and who we are as people. So, when I say take advantage of your sleep, really thinking about what are you consuming at a mental level shortly before you go to bed? How are we programming our subconscious? A few practices that can be implemented are simply writing down 5 things you were grateful for that day, or maybe writing down 10 new business ideas or challenge spaces, problems you see in the world to let your brain kind of reminisce on them, think about them while you're sleeping. And then immediately upon waking in the morning, taking advantage of those first couple of minutes to really tap into any conclusions or interesting connections our subconscious may have been making during that time. So these are three easy things that we can prioritize to really make a big difference on how our brain is functioning, both at a emotional type of level as well as just pure functioning productivity ability to produce, affecting how we're showing up for ourselves as well as the organizations we're a part of. So, as a reminder, thinking about the foods that we're eating and that ultimately determining the different neurotransmitters we have available that dictate our mood and ability to think. Taking deep breaths to make sure we're in a state of relaxation and calm to really think about the possibilities of what could be rather than being in a stressed out state where we don't even have the complete facilities to think about what could be, what new additions could be added, or how can we improve and innovate our own lives or the businesses we're a part of. And then finally, taking advantage of our sleep and subconscious. Next slide. Ultimately, at the beginning of this talk, I shared how I like sitting at this intersection point of community, technology, and possibility, and how NFTs and Web3 are beautifully positioned here right now. But ultimately, for me, my mission or a really core value for me is to enhance our human experience, help people live their optimal life. And these are just some different tools to achieve that. When we're thinking about innovation or technology or strategy, even, they're just tools to achieve whatever different values or goals we might have for ourselves and where we might want to be going in life, and also for the businesses that we're a part of. And as we're thinking about the different behaviors we might do, the different things we might interact with or consume physically or mentally, as well as the people we interact with and surround ourselves with, and the ideas we immerse ourselves in. All of these are simply tools to then work towards whatever different values we might have at this intersection point. This intersection point looks different for other people. It might look like a complete circle if there's full alignment. It might look like a whole bunch of other circles making this really complex Venn diagram. And ultimately, at those intersection points is where power can be found. But we have to show up fully for ourselves to then build upon the different foundations that might be available to then kind of build towards whatever different future states we might want to create. Next slide. So, with this in mind, both our values, different tools, or things we might be interacting with or consuming, paired with some of the different challenges we might have thought about at the beginning, or maybe they've come up throughout our time together right now. What different opportunities do you see to innovate in your life or in your business, in an industry that you're involved with at large? There are opportunities and these overlap points all around us, and there's a constant need for additions of something new or an improvement of something old. Just as new ideas come into the spaces need to adapt to those, and that's called innovation, which we all have the power to tap into. Next slide. So, continuing to take a few moments just to imagine what your life or your business could really look like. thinking about any other ways that you might be able to support your mind, your body, others you're working with the resources and tools to most effectively achieve these different things that you might be imagining. Next slide. So I'm hoping that you have some visions that are inspiring you as you move forward from this talk. And I would love to hear about them. So please feel free to reach out and connect with me at Erin Magennis on any of the different social media networks, as well as LinkedIn. I would love to connect there. And if you see any opportunity to build these different visions that you might have, whether it's specifically in this NFT Web3 type of space, leveraging that type of technology or exploring what possibilities it might have for you or your business or any other spaces you're interested in, or from this level of personal development and improvement and growth from a neuroscience health type of angle. I'd love to chat about that. So please connect. Thank you for sharing your time with me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. You have the most soothing voice ever.
Thank
I was
you.
like in complete meditation
Good. I
mode.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. I was a yoga teacher. I still am one inside.
Mhm. Love it.
I'm just on hiatus a little bit.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was very, very good. Thank you so much. It was really amazing how you connected all the aspects of self and spirit and technology and community together and health. It's really amazing. You need to
Thank
keep doing that forever.
you.
Many people need that to contextualize where we are, you know?
Mhm. Definitely.
So tell me, how did you get here? You say you had gone on a journey and then you became a yoga teacher. Tell us a little
Mhm.
bit about your journey.
Yeah, so when I was in high school, I suddenly had a whole bunch of health complications, went down a Western medical route first. They didn't quite have all the answers at that time. There's a lot more research being done now. So I had to kind of turn to my own devices, dive into medical literature myself, which gave me this profound love and passion for science.
Mm,
In particular, just our nervous system connects our whole body together in this really intricate, beautiful type of way.
that's true.
And like our bodies are these incredibly complex, amazing machines of
Hmm.
sorts.
Yeah.
And getting to that central line, I just find so fascinating, like that root layer of our beingness at a physiological level. So that directed me into studying neuroscience, really kind of delving into lots of branches there. And in that, still maintaining a profound passion for health. And just since I learned firsthand that without good health, nothing else really matters because you can't do much else.
Right.
How important mental well-being is in that equation and just how big of a variable that is.
Hmm.
So, taking that neuroscience and yoga background, got yoga, holistic health, nutrition certifications along the way. Um, Taking all of that and packaging it into a digital app to help people take that first step of managing stress and anxiety better, just so we can show up in our full selves, even in those moments that might be stressful, and making it a bit more friendly to taking those first steps, which can be really challenging sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so Then from there, I fell into the tech startup rabbit hole, and I'm probably not gonna get out.
I haven't gotten out in 30 years, so
Yeah.
welcome
Mhm.
to the club.
Yep. Yep.
It keeps going. I think I raised my first fund at 19 and I'm now 47.
Mhm.
So there you go.
Yep. Yeah, that's
I
what
pitched my first business when I was 15.
mhm. Yeah,
So
so
yeah,
I I think I'll be in this space for a while, and just the ability to think of an idea, see a problem in the world, and then create something that can make the world better, like, that's such a
yeah,
fun space to be in.
yeah. And as a woman, it's totally the right space to be in because we have so much of the creative energy of the matrix.
Mhm.
So we're this is part of what we do is create things.
Absolutely.
So it's incredible that you've tuned in on all of that, and at such a young age. It's amazing. It's not
Mhm.
everybody gets there,
Yeah.
and you can
Yeah,
share with
no.
others. And sometimes it
I
does take a crisis. I mean, that's kind of what happens, right? And when you get to
definitely
be older, my age,
mhm.
it's multiple crises. Then you can kind of enjoy actually the challenge and surpassing the challenge.
Mhm.
When you can see it with joy and humor. My guru tells me it's like you become smooth like stone.
Mhm. I love that.
He said you can become a monk. He said, but if you run a business, you will become equally enlightened
Mhm.
because you will be smooth like stone. He said, because everything comes at you when you run a business.
Mhm.
So might as well just. He's like, everybody thinks they have to be a monk and sit underneath me. You don't.
Mhm.
And he
Or
says,
even
he said the same with being a parent, the same with having a marriage, the same with
mhm.
anything. People think there's a special path to being happy and
Mhm.
and finding your joy, and it's everywhere. It's just a matter of how you deal with it.
Definitely. Yeah, I think, one thing that I'm really enjoying seeing kind of in the energy that some of the younger generations are bringing, as well as what the technology of the whole Web3 space is allowing for,
Hmm.
especially from a DAO angle, is just allowing people to explore their different interests and passions and contribute the skill sets and value that they have in these meaningful ways that can be recognized and supported, and just creating these circular economies that
Hmm.
are a lot more wholesome overall for
Yeah.
everyone involved than, I guess, in compared to some other economic models that don't value all of those contributions as equally or effectively.
Yeah, yeah. I've had that experience. I'm actually in love with DAOs. I'm in love with.
Same.
I've
Yep.
decided a while back. I mean, besides it's called the DAO
Mhm.
anyway, like spiritually, but um,
Mhm.
I love I love everything about what they stand for. I love everything about what's happening. It's such a weird way of being if you're not used to being that way.
Yes,
So I'm just excited to
definitely.
like find my first one or found it
Mhm.
or whatever. But it's for those of you who are not familiar with DAOs, it's basically an organization, but the rules are written into the program, so the rules can't get altered or corrupted. And so whatever the intention of the purity of the organization is when it starts, stays. At least in theory. I haven't
Yeah.
experienced it.
Mhm.
So, but I believe that it does happen that way.
Yeah.
As far as I can tell, there's been some amazing DAOs that have gotten formed, and as you mentioned,
Mhm.
and done well capitalized. So there's
Definitely.
lots of fun new things out there. I don't know if
Yes,
everybody's ready for DAOs, but it'll be fun.
I agree. With all of that, yes.
DAOs, I think I was just talking to someone else earlier today. I was like DAOs and 5G and blockchain and IoT, all those
Mhm.
hitting at the same time in
It's a
the
lot to
world
keep
is
up with.
gonna be, yeah. This is my
Mhm.
third round now, so in the tech revolution. So I've seen this happen 3 times already. So actually, this is the 4th time now.
Yes.
So I'm addicted to it. So I said, welcome to the club.
Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much.